Okay. First of all, Chag Sameach.
Excellent.
Hag
Happy
Sameach to
Hanukkah,
you.
everyone. It's great to have a Shiur on Hanukkah. Again, yeah, I appreciate your indulging in just doing this online, just because, when he comes home, the sick child, I have to be with him, and my wife has to leave. But then also, I don't need to share germs with anybody either. Like, I'm doing you a favor, it's going around. God knows what I've been exposed to. So we're going to do now the 18th chapter. We already kind of did the lesson of both chapters at the end of last week, but we have to just kind of drive it home. I just couldn't resist. I couldn't wait. But let's read this. This is also a very bizarre chapter, the two-part story of Pesel Micha. So, in the beginning of chapter 18, Bayamim Ahem Ein Melech B'Yisrael. So again, we saw those words, Bayamim Ahem, like we're saying right now, Bayamim Ahem Bazman Hazeh in Al Anisim. In those days, there was no king. Vayamim Ahem Shevet Hadanim Mevakesh Lo Nachala Lashevet Ki Lo Naflo Ad Hayom Hahu B'Toch Shoftei Yisrael B'Nachala. And in those days, the tribe of Dan was looking for a place to inhabit because, and if I read the translation, because an adequate, they put in a kind of a brackets, an adequate heritage had not yet fallen to them up to that day among the tribes of Israel. So, one of the benefits actually of doing this online is I can share a screen. So I want to just share a screen with you. Let's try this. Let's see if this works. Okay, you see my screen, right?
Right.
Okay, so
Hmm.
you see right over here, Dan is over here on the coastline. They have this kind of small cutout, but notice it's like right above, you see Philistia? That's right above the Gaza Strip. So Dan would be sort of like, you see where it says Ashdod? So if you're going from Jerusalem to the sixth highway, you come along that road by Beit Shemesh, and then you come all the way down. I think, what is it, the three highway, I believe, and then that whole area. If I can just can I yeah, I can enlarge it a little bit. Okay, so Ekron is one of the Philistine cities here. Ashdod, Ashkelon. So right above that, so the Mefarshim, they have a difference of opinion. They're not sure what does it mean they didn't settle. Some say that, I mean, it's not a very big space, and maybe they had a some sort of exponential growth, and therefore they couldn't fit there, and they needed more space, or because of the enemies there, the Canaanites or whoever was dwelling there, that they didn't have the ability to really settle because it's an unusual language. The adequate heritage had not yet fallen to them from the tribes of Israel. So also this can lend credence to the theory that we discussed last week that these two stories are not taking place chronologically, but this is more like in the beginning of the period of Shoftim, sort of after the settling of the land, where it's not really fully divided, conquered, and settled yet. So that's important. So then that's just to give you an idea of where it is that we're standing. We go back to the Psukim. וישלחו בני דן ממשפחתם חמישה אנשים מקצתם אנשים בני חיל מצרה מאש תאול לרגל אס הארץ לחקרה ויאמר להם לכו חקרו אס הארץ ויבואו הר אפרים עד בית מיכה וילין לשם. So they sent five, the tribe of Dan, they sent five men from their families, from among their leaders, men of valor. From here we have, by the way, Tzara'ah Me'esh Ta'ol. It's the third time that we have this because we saw it in the beginning and the end of the story of Shimshon. Now, Shimshon was from Dan, so this must be like their big cities, Tzara and Eshtaol. Okay, and these are big, brave men. And then what do? L'ragel es haaretz l'chakra. They have to spy the land. They want to spy out the land, and they have to check it out to see. So they have to go spy the land, go investigate the land, and see if this is a good place for you. Okay, because they're looking for expansion, and when they're looking for expansion, what they're doing is they have to send scouts. Now, in the story of the Miraglim, now I want you to keep in mind the story of the Miraglim that we have in the Chumash. The story of the Miraglim never uses the word Leragel.
Right.
We know that it says Viaturu at Eretz Canaan. Here it actually uses the word Leragel and Ulechakra. What does Lachor mean? Lachor means to really delve into something. We say Drisha v'chakira, that real investigation. Lachor is like to really get underneath the surface. Okay? And they end up in the house of Micha and they spend the night there. Hema in Pasuk Gimel. Hema in Beis Micha v'Hema hikiras kol anar Levi v'yasiru sham v'yomer lo mi haviacha halom ma ta'aseh bazeh malachapo. So they're in Micha's house, and as we know, he already has this new rabbi, this Kohen, who we know who he is. We revealed the secret last week, but they recognize the voice of this Levi child. Now, how do they know him? I don't know. Maybe they just recognize, oh, somebody's singing Adon Olam or somebody's duchening or whatever it is. Or it could be they actually knew him. It could be that maybe from, because remember, the tribe of Levi does not have Nachala. They were in cities all over the place. So maybe they recognized him. They said, wait, I know this kid, right? I mean, that's happened to you, I'm sure, that you go somewhere and you hear, oh, I know that. There is also something nice. Let's say you daven in the world, you go traveling around the world and you daven somewhere and you see a tune of familiarity or you hear words of familiarity. And in the davening, it gives you a certain sense of comfort, like, oh, okay, I know I belong here. Or this always happens, by the way. You know, when you're traveling and then you hear some people speaking Hebrew, and all of a sudden you're like, and then you kind of give each other the knowing look, like, yeah. Um, I've made so many friends traveling like that. You know, like when we go to Israel, we see each other, we're in touch. We would never have anything to do with each other, but because we happen to be, in Western Canada at the same time in the summer 2 years ago, so now we're best friends. Now that's just the way the world works. Okay, so they ask him. They go. They said, like, what are you doing here? Who brought you here? What do you have here? Me. That's interesting. Mi heviacha halom. Who brought you here? Ma ata oseh bazeh. What are you doing with this? Meaning, like what is this? Is this a shul? Is this avodah zarah? Like I'm not sure. It's unclear what they thought this was. Umalecha po. Like what is this here? What do you have going on here? Vayomer lehem kazo v'chazeh asali micha vayiskerini v'eila l'chayin. He's like, Micha did this for me and that so and so. That's exactly the phrase so and so, right? It's kazo kazeh. It's the play, it's the sounding of the words, alliteration also. There's a phrase in modern Hebrew when something like it's gone by the wayside. They just say hayo haya like that. It's good. It's over. It's done. Kazo kaze, yeah, he did like this. We put this here, put that there, and guess what happened? He hired me, and now I'm the Kohen. Vayomer lo sha'alna belo Kim. Now it's interesting. The Mefarshim dispute here whether this means avodah zarah or really God. So it would seem that maybe they're really asking, like, oh, they think he's a real Kohen, and he's a real from guy, and they said, ask God, v'neidaha tatzliach darkeinu asher nachnu holchem aleha, and he said, and ask your God or ask God, like, are we going to be successful in this place? We have to scout out new territory. Are we going to be successful? Vayomer lem hakohen lechul shalom. So he says to them, go in peace. Nochach Hashem darkachem asher telchu ba. The journey which you're going to go on is like Hashem is good with it. Now, by the way, notice they ask about Elohim, and he answers with Hashem, the Yud Ke Vav Ke. So and he's using Hashem's name. So we pointed out last week sort of the split personality irony of these characters, that even though they are worshiping idols and pagan gods or whatever it is, but they're still very, very frum in the way they talk and talking about God and saying that God is with you. And also they point out, I mean, he's a gun for hire. He's a hired Kohen. So you think he's going to give a bad answer? Like, what do you think you're going to get? You get what you pay for. So he's saying, oh, we're going to be like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, just pay in cash at the door, right? As long as you pay in cash, then you're fine. Okay. The well, there's so many things to that effect. Okay, so vayelchu chameshes hanashim vayavou laisha vayuro emes asher bikirba yosheves levetach k'mishpat sidonim shoket evotech v'ein machlim davar ba'aretz yoresh etzer rechokim hema mitzidonim v'davar ein lehem imadam. So they continue their journey. They came to a place called Laish. I'm going to pull up a map in a second. And they saw that the people who were in it were living securely, like Sidonians. They were complaining. No, the Sidonians were like, you don't bother me, I don't bother you. I have no beef with you, I have no problems, but I don't need an army because we're not interested in anything. We're complacent, we're secure. There's no issue in the land that could cause them embarrassment. There was no heir to the dynasty. They were far from the Sidonians. They had no alliance with any person. The people who are there are like, like nish to here, nish to here. So like, who perfect to conquer? So let me show you exactly where this. It's amazing. I say every time that the the only way to find maps are the Christian websites. Okay, so if you look on the bottom of the page here, this is the area of interest. So remember that the Don was already on the coast. They bordered on the coast, and now they're coming all the way inward, almost to the Jordan River. Okay, so they come to this place here. Laish is right here by the red dot. Okay, so they're coming from the west all the way east. Here, by the way, see here's Zora Eshtaol. So they left from there, and here you see Beit Shemesh, you see Jerusalem, and you see we're going to see they go by a place called Kiryat Yearim, which we're gonna see in a minute. But they go all the way to this place called Laish. Now we know this because it's first of all it's north of Jerusalem, and it's near Anatot. Remember, there's a the north of Jerusalem. There's an airport, is Atarot Airport, but like it's on the way up here. And then you have a place called Geva Binyamin. And these are all these places, like if you take Route 60 right through the north of Jerusalem, the first place that you see settled like over the Green Line, however you want to call it, is a place called Geva Binyamin. People call it Adam. It's a nice little town. And people do not live there for necessarily philosophical or political reasons. They live there purely because it's much less expensive than living in Jerusalem, but it's close enough to Jerusalem. You have the separate road. But you see, they have a place here on the right is Gilgal, Yericho. Obviously you could see the topography that this is high up. Then, of course, on the right, as you go east, it descends down into the valley towards the Dead Sea, okay, towards Gilgal. And this is where they crossed over. So they're moving. So if I look at the bottom here, they're moving all the way from here, from the coast, all the way eastward, which is quite a move, okay? So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. Maps are always fun. So they find this group. We could take them over. Kivoachem, I'm sorry, Vayomeru, no, I'm sorry, I'm like, Pasuk Vayavo El Achehem Tzara Ve'eshtaol, Vayomer Lehem Achem Atem. So
before
yes.
you go on, what is ve'ein machlim devar ba'aretz? What does that mean? In the sentence before, can you continue translating that sentence?
Yeah. They in other words, like nothing could cause them embarrassment in the sense that they have no issue with anybody. They're like really like they're an easy target. They have no real affinity. In other words, it's almost like the way I understand it is if we knock them off, nobody's going to care, kind of thing. So they go back, and mind you, they're from Dan. They have to cross back through Tzaresh Ol, which we just saw on the map. And they said, they said to their brothers, like, no, so what do you say? Vayomru kumu na'aleh aleihem ki ra'inu es haaretz v'hinei tova ma'od v'atem machshim al te'atzlu lalechas levo l'reshes es haaretz. They say, let us advance against them because we've seen the land and it's very good. Sound familiar, by the way? That's what Yoshua and Kalev said. They said, oh, the land is very good. Hinei haaretz tova ma'od. They use the word ma'od. Okay. We have seen the land, it's good, and yet you remain still. Don't be too lazy to go to arrive and inherit the land. Like, go, take care of it, okay? Kivoachem tevo el ambotech va'aretz rechavas yadayim ki nesana elokim biyadchem makom asher ein sham machzor kol davar sheba'aretz. Let's arise. We're going to go come upon a people there that are very trusting. The land is huge, it's expansive. Hashem has delivered it into your hand. It's a place where there's no shortage of everything. Like you have Alamilas. You have everything that you have, everything you need is there. So what happens? So they send an army. They send a militia. 600 men who are obviously girded for war. And they're all from the tribe of Dan. And they go there, and they're going to go to this place eastward. Vayalu vayachanu b'kiryat yarim b'Yehuda. Al kain karu l'makamahu machane Dan ariyam hazeh hinei acharei kiryat yarim. They stop in a place called Kiryat Yarim. So Kiryat Yarim, you might know. So when you take the Jerusalem highway to Tel Aviv, okay, so you leap. Now they have so many different extensions from the south and from the north, etc. But the main way, when you come out, let's say from Binyanei Homa, and you take, that first road, the winding road, and you pass by, you see on your left, you see Har Menuchos and the road to Givat Shol and Har Nof. And then when the first thing that you have, the first exit now is for Mivaseret Zion. Mivaseret Zion, there's the mall. You go up and the thing goes through the mountain, but you see the mall, and it's Harel. Harel we know because Harel in the War of Independence was a very strategic place obviously for the battle for independence and also in 1967, of course, coming from the Burma Road, all those things, all those very, very important places. The next stop that you have off the highway, major stop, there's two entrances actually. The first one goes towards Abu Ghosh, but now most people, if you want to go to a place called Telstone, there's this, and when you go by, there's also Telstone Neve Ilan. Neve Ilan is famous for one thing and one thing only, is that it's the Elvis gas station. So when you come off the gas station there, tour buses stop, there's an Elvis shrine, there's an Elvis museum in the gas station there. But if you keep going up that road, you can go to the backside of Abu Ghosh, but also you can go to Neve Ilan, which has a resort there. Actually, there was the Castel Winery is right there. And also there used to be Golan Globus used to have the production center there. They had their studios there. It's some sort of studio now, it's still there. And then, but that road to Telstone, Telstone is called Kiryat Yarim. Kiryat Yarim is exact, and it's going to be an important part also in the time of David HaMelech, as we'll see when we get to it in like 9 years. But David HaMelech, so Kiryat Yarim, so they stop in Kiryat Yarim, and if you go all the way up, there's a place called Haradar and Malach Hamisha. Malach Hamisha also was very, very strategic in the wars in the state of Israel. So they go to a place called Kiryat Yarim. So it just I emphasize this because these are places that you can go to, and you see it, and there's so much history there. As a matter of fact, in the top of Telstone, which is also called Kiryat Yarim, on the top of the hill, there is a memorial for Mickey Marcus. Mickey Marcus was an American soldier, and he helped the Israeli troops in independence. They made a movie about it, and Paul Newman was in it, right? Oh, not Paul Newman. I forgot what it's called, the movie, but whatever. But you know what I'm talking about the Burma Road and whatever. Anyway, Mickey Marcus is very, very, but there's an arena there. So how do I know this? So first of all, yes, every rabbi is a frustrated Israeli tour guide, but also because I went to yeshiva in Telstone, and the Mickey Marcus Memorial was one of the end zones for our football field that we played on concrete. So that's how we know. Anyway, so I don't want to think I'm so smart or anything. That was our end zone. But I figured if we're going to throw touchdowns there, we should know what it is. So they come to Kiryat Yud Gimel Yudalid. Vayavru misham harafar vayavad bei Micha. So they go up. Again, Kiryat Yarim is up a hill, up a mountain, as opposed to coming from the coastline. It's important, okay? So they go from there to Mount Ephraim, and they come to Micha's house. Vayanu chameshus anashim alchim l'ragelas aretz layish. Vayomer lachehem haydatem ki yesh bebatim ha'ela efod u'trofim u'pesel masecha va'ata de'u ma ta'asu. So they go on from there to Har Ephraim, to Micha's house. The 5 men who are spying, and they come out to the land of Laish, they speak up and they say, did you know that in these buildings, we have all kinds of like religious stuff? There's an ephod, there's a priestly vestment, there are idols, carved image, molten image. Now you know what you should do. De'u matasu, know what to do. Vayasuru shama, vayavo el beis hanar levi beis Micha vayshulu shalom. So they turn there, they come to the house of this Levi kid, as we're going to see who he is in a second, we know, at the house of Micha, and they greet him. V'sheish meos ish chagurim klei milchamtam, nitzavim pesach ashar, asher mibnei dan. And there's 600 men with their weapons, and they're ready for war, and they're standing at the entrance of the gate, and they're all from the tribe of Dan. Vaya'alu chameshes ha'anashim halchim l'ragel ha'aretz, ba'u shama, lakhu es ha'pesel, v'sa'ifod, v'sa'trafim, v'sa'masecha, v'akoin nitzav pesach ashar, v'sheish meos ish, the 5 men who were spying, they arrived there. They took out the carved image, they took the ephod, they took all these symbols, they took the molten image, the sun, the face, all the avodah zarah stuff, and the priest is standing to open the gate as they're ready to go to war. Okay? Ve'ele ba'o beis Micha, and as they came into the house of Micha, vayichu es pesel ephod, and they took his idol, and a trafim, and the red all these stuff. The Kohen says, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you taking my shul stuff? Why are you taking my Sefer Torah? Why are you taking my mantle? Why are you taking all these things? Again, lahavdil, of course. I'm just trying to make it relative. Vayamar hacharesh. They said to him, Zai shtil, be quiet. Sim yadecha al picha v'lechi imona v'heilana la'av l'kohen. So they go on from there. So he thinks that they're about to take everything from him. He finally gets this job. He gets hired for this one Micha guy, and he's the priest, and he has a pretty good gig. And now this army, this little army shows up, and he's like, "Wait a minute, you're going to take all my stuff away?" And they're like, "No, no, no, shh, it's okay. Listen, we have a better offer for you, right?" They said, "Be quiet. Why don't you come with us and you be our Kohen?" Like, what's better than getting taken over is to be, this is like the first corporate takeover, right? This is like the private equities coming in to take over the small mom and pop business. What do you and look how they phrase it. They said, "Would you want to be a priest to the house of one guy, or be a priest for an entire tribe and a family in Israel?" So, by the way, bigger is not always better. It's an important lesson. Bigger is not always better. Trust me, I know this. And they entice him. They say, "Listen, we're not coming in. We don't do anything to you. We want you to join us." And then all of a sudden, his countenance changes. His attitude changes. And what happens? He was pleased, and he takes all the stuff and he goes along with them. Oh, you're not stealing it. You're not ruining it. You're not plundering it. We are now moving elsewhere. Okay? And they come in the midst of the people. Vayifnu vayelechu, they turn and they walk away. Vayasimu es hataf es hameknev es hakvudo lifnehem, and they took all the children, the livestock, the possessions. So they're clearing out Micha's place as well. Okay. Hema herchiku mi beis Micha, vanashim asher bebatim asher beis Micha nizaku vayadbiku es bnei Dan. So they're already quite a distance away from Micha's house. Mind you, they have just taken all of his stuff. Okay. And the men who are in the houses near Micha's house, they were nizaku, like they're in shock, like zoak is to cry out. Here they use the word mustard. I don't know what mustard means. I know what mustard is. I don't know what mustard means, but meaning they were like, well, what's going on here? We can't have this. So then they catch up and they come and vayadbiko devek is to glue. It's like they catch up and they attach themselves to Dan. They're running after them. Vayikru b'nei Dan vayasibu b'neihem. They call out to the people of Dan, who now turn around to face them. And they say to Micha, like, they turn around like, what are you so upset about? Right? What's bothering you? In other words, we just stole all your stuff. You're chasing after us. You ask us what's going on. We turn around and like, what's your problem? Okay, there's one way you could be defensive, you could be offensive. They're being obviously very offensive and also very offensive. Vayomer, Es Elokai asher sisi lekachtem. It's really Elohai. Elohai asher sisi lekachtem v'sakohen v'telechu maliod. Umazet termu lo nelai malach. They said, "You took my God that I made, you took my priest, and you left. What else do I have? So how can you ask me what do you think I'm upset about? You just took all my stuff. You took my guy. You took my God. Like what? Hello? Okay." Okay. Vayomer elav b'nei Dan al tashma kolcha imoru pen yifku v'chem anashim eri nefesh v'asafta nafshecha v'nefesh beisecha. The children of Dan said, "Be quiet. We don't want to hear your voice because if you escalate this, we're going to have to fight. Okay? Do you want to die?" So they made it very clear, without getting into a physical confrontation, that if you pursue this complaint of yours, you're going to have to pay for it. And all of a sudden, things kind of like de-escalate, okay? B'nei Dan, they go on their way, and Micha, he sees, chazakim hema. Yeah, I don't have a chance against this, might is right. I can't overpower them, and he goes and he turns and he goes back home. So Micha had this shul of his, whatever you want to call it, for a short while, didn't last very long. And he has to try and challenge the greater power of Dan that comes in. And what happens? Nothing. He realizes he doesn't have a shot, so he turns around. Okay, on to the next. V'hema lachu es asher samicha v'es hakohen asher hayalo v'yavo al layish al am shoket votech v'yakol sam lefichar v'es eir safru be'esh. So they finally come with Micha, and they have all the stuff, and they get to Layish, and it's a nice, quiet, it's shoket votech. It's a quiet, secure place. And what do? They wreak havoc there. Vayaku osam. They kill everybody there, and they burn the city. Ve'ein matzil. And nobody's going to save them. Ki rechokahim b'tzidon. Because this is very, very far from Sidon. V'davar lehem ein lehem im adam. They have no alliance with anyone. V'hi b'emek asher lebeis rechov. And it's also in a valley which is near a place called Beit Rechov. V'yavnu aseh v'yishviva. And so they build the city and they dwell there. Vayikru Shem Ha'ir Dan b'Shem Dan Avihem. So they call the place Dan after their father Dan. Asher Yulal Yisrael, who was called to Israel. V'ulam Laish Shem Ha'ir Rishonah, but it was already called Laish originally. So Laish becomes Dan. We know this is common practice that we had Beit El. We had it in the last few parshas. Beit El originally was called. Do you remember what it's called? Beit El was called Luz. Luz. I always say, you know what kind of people were from Luz, Yemima? Losers. I can't. It's a bad combination of rabbi dad jokes. It's incurable. So it was called Laish. Now they call it Dan because now, but what they're doing is though they're changing their roots and they're setting new roots. But what's amazing is that this is again, if we follow Rashi's opinion, that this is not that long after Kibush v'Chiluk, the conquering and separation of the land, and they're actually saying, well, whatever felt to you by divine inspiration that you're supposed to have this land, we're saying we don't want it, or we're not taking it, we're taking something else. It's not good enough for us. And again, this just only feeds into the notion of these last two stories. The last 4 chapters of Sefer Shoftim are about how quickly the degradation begins, and that then gives us to the next pasuk, and it's all a build-up for the next pasuk, which we looked at last week already, but you can't ignore it. Vayakimu lahem b'nei Dan as Pesel. Then b'nei Dan, like the worst thing, the one thing they're always railing against constantly in the Chumash and in the Navi, don't worship idols. And what do? They put up an idol, and who's the Kohen? Yohanan's son, ben Gershom, ben Menashe, huvanav hayikonim l'shevet adani ad yom galus haaretz. It's this Yonasan. Okay, Yonasan, not a big deal. Menashe, not a big deal. I'm sorry, Gershom, not a big deal. But Menashe, and we saw last week. Look how it's written in the text with the giant nun, because it's trying to spare us a little bit of embarrassment for Moshe Rabbeinu. They're saying that we know Moshe had 2 sons, Gershom and Eliezer, and this is his son Gershom, and this is Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson, who is the Kohen for Pesel Micha. So it makes sense then, of course, that this is soon after, but it's also a buildup of look how quickly it took for them to fall so far off the cliff and for them to decline so precipitously. That's something that is just, and that's the story of every generation, right? We know if we pray and hope that our kids follow in our footsteps, and we double pray and double hope that our grandkids follow in our footsteps. Okay, and also this is why perhaps also to protect Moshe Rabbeinu that the name is not mentioned till the very end. Normally speaking, when we have a character and the character is going to be named, the character is named at the beginning of the story. Here it's only named at the end of the story. Okay, one more pasuk and we'll just kind of wrap this all together. So he's a priest, his sons are priests for the tribe of Dan. Dan is they're not a priest, they're not a priestly people. Dan is a regular Dan, right? And they're until the days of the exile. So they have Micha's image. They're worshiping his Avodah Zarah the entire time that Hashem is being worshipped in Shiloh, as we know, because the Beis HaMikdash obviously is not yet built. We haven't gotten to that yet. But the Mishkan was in certain places. And for 369 years, the Mishkan sat in Shiloh. I'll recommend it again if you have not been to see the Mishkan Museum in Shiloh, and you can see the original site. And they have this beautiful 3D, like they could juxtapose it on the area, and you could see what it looked like. And the place that you're looking, you go in this like overlook point, and you could see outside, oh, that's what the Mishkan would look like. But you look over on the mountain, and you could see it. You can walk on the spot where it was. Really quite fascinating. It's called Ancient Shiloh. It's in a very, very fun neighborhood if you like going to those places. But you can take Route 60. If you're in Jerusalem, you just go up north, Route 60 past Geva, Binyamin, Adam. You take the road, you pass by Psagot, you see the big Rami Levi over there, and then you keep going, and then eventually you get to Shiloh. You have a lot of traffic with cars with green license plates, and it's a lot of fun. I've driven it many, many times. That's no problem. But to see ancient Shiloh, and you pass by places like Eli, and you pass by Beit El, all these places, it's the center, it's the spine and the heart of the land of Israel, and that's what happens. So they go the entire time. So imagine that for 369 years, I mean, if we give or take, But for the entire time that the Mishkan and people are being Olel Regel and people are bringing Karbonos and they're doing all these things in the Mishkan, the tribe of Dan and others are worshiping Pesel Micha. Also interesting that they still call it Pesel Micha. Even though Micha had it taken away from him, and even though he's not involved anymore, and it's only his Kohen who happens to be the Anikel of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's now in the tribe of Dan. Okay, whatever. But sometimes things are known how they're known. What's really interesting is like if you look at the characters in the story, like who comes out looking? Nobody comes out looking good in the story. But this is the ultimate commentary. This is what Rabbi Hatton says. It's also just so insightful. Is that look how quickly the decline takes place. This people whose grandparents came in from the Midbar to settle the land of Israel. And then you have this person, Micha, who stole from his mother, and his mother's misguided, and he gives it back, and they build this idol, and then he hires this wayward Levite, this Levi, he becomes a Cohen, he's the priest, and the Levi's all messed up, and whatever. And then you have the tribe of Dan, and Dan doesn't like where they are, they're going to go somewhere else, and they're going to strong arm one of their own brethren, right? The only people that look half decent in this story are the people who were residing in this area that got conquered, right? They're spying out the land, and they said, you know what? Let's go to a place called Laish, the people of Laish. So the people of Laish, who are the non-Jews, and that's just the sad commentary of this whole story, is that the hero of the story, or the noble people of the story, are the noble people of Laish who did nothing to anybody, have no enemies. They said they have no ties, they have nobody's bothering them, they don't bother anybody, and they have to suffer because of the decline and unfortunately this decrepit state of the Jewish nation, which could very well possibly be only the third generation after the desert. Maybe even sooner than that, depending how you calculate the years. But if this decline happens so quickly, that's really, and that's why this is, again, these are found at the end of Shoftim. And what's the key part here, though? So what do you think the lesson really is, though? Like, why is it even in this book? And it has to do with the beginning, the very beginning of the chapter. The very first thing that the parak says was, "Bayamim ahem ein melech b'Yisrael." Is that ultimately speaking, in order to be successful as a nation, there has to be proper rule. Now, the Shoftim, as we have seen, and they start here and then they slowly decline, but the Shoftim were leaders, and they were physical warrior leaders, and sometimes they're a very spiritual element as well, but they weren't able to necessarily unite the entire nation as one, like a king would be able to do. Even, by the way, we'll see when we get to the book of in the Navi in Shmuel about the king, that the king wasn't always the best thing either. We had lots of issues with kings, but it's still definitely better than the model of Shoftim. And the harai is that there's no way it's that in the Chumash in Devarim it tells you have to place upon yourselves a king. It never said. Yeah, it says you have to have shoftim. Shoftim are there to be judges to adjudicate cases, but never to be the ruler. As we said, there are different types of leaders. There's a shofet, there's a navi, there's a melech, there's a shoter. There's different types of roles, but ultimately to bring the entire nations of Israel together, that has to be always through a king. And that's why the parak starts that there was no king. And as we said at the very last pasuk in the entire sefer, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks, God willing, is again, I'm just pulling it out. Bayamim ahem ein melech b'Yisrael ish hayashar beinav yaseh. So this is the second time, and we're going to see it the third time, maybe even more, that the text is emphasizing the fact that the reason is if they're without good leadership, everything falls into decline. And because they kind of ish hayashar beinav yaseh, people do whatever they wanted. It's hefkervelt. It was a free for all. If they want to do whatever they want, then there's no rule, there's no order, which is why people always ask about, like halacha, for instance. Halacha is there to keep us in check. When you do away with halacha, you do away with Jewish law and tradition, and you say, I can do whatever I want, then the second that somebody gets tired of doing whatever you want, they'll do something else and something else. And guess what? You're left with nothing. We've seen the erosion of tradition in our time, and it's scary, and to the point where people don't know what it means even to be Jewish or how to support something Jewish, and they come up with all these crazy opinions on God knows what. If your whole religion is based on feeling good and and I want to just social justice or something like that, then you're going to be left with nothing. If you take the Torah out of the equation, if you take the halacha out of the equation, no, we need to have that. Now, halacha is very broad. And there are a lot of ways to do it. But if you stay on that, my 16-lane highway, if you stay on that road, then you're going to be okay. But if you decide you're going to make up your own thing here and there, that's a whole different story. So that's the first of the very damning story at the end of Sefer Shoftim. Again, nothing to do with Shoftim. It's actually about the absence of Shoftim, which is the emphasis here. And then next time we're going to see we have the story of Pelegesh Begiva, two final chapters, which are unbelievably disturbing. And so if you want to peek ahead, you're allowed. I give you permission, but it's all good. Anyway, you should just have a wonderful Hanukkah, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We're gonna see how the patient's doing. But yeah, a lichted in Hanukkah, a crazy, crazy time. I don't know. We're gonna be okay. That's fine. We're gonna be okay. But I don't know how, but we will be because we don't have a choice. So
Hope
happy Hanukkah,
Moshe's
everybody.
better. Hope
Thank you
Moshe
so
feels
much. I
better.
appreciate
Wait,
that. Thank
next
you.
week you're in Israel, right?
No, I'm leaving. I leave. I'm here next week. I leave after Shabbos, the 27th, 20th, whatever. So, all right. Next week Yontif, I'm here. The week of Yontif, I'm here. Take care.
Bye-bye.